Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It is Tuesday.
Yep.
Early morning here in Kentucky. Reading that book there. Today, it's a three-part parallel, which I think we're going to get through the whole thing. And Jesus is rejected in Nazareth. First, we're going to start in Matthew chapter 13, starting at verse 53. When Jesus had finished telling these stories and illustrations, he left that part of the country. He returned to Nazareth, his hometown. When he taught there in the synagogue, everyone was amazed and said, "Where does he get this wisdom and the power to do miracles?" When they scoffed, he's just a carpenter's son, and we know Mary, his mother, and his brothers, James and Joseph, Simon and Judas. All his sisters live right here among us. Where did he learn all these things? And they were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. Then Jesus told them, "A prophet is honored everywhere except in his hometown and among his own family." And so he could only do a few miracles there because of their unbelief. From there, we go to Mark chapter 6, starting at verse 1. Jesus left that part of the country and returned with his disciples to Nazareth, his hometown. The next Sabbath he began teaching in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. They asked, "Where did he get all this wisdom and the power to perform such miracles?" Then they scoffed. "He's just a carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon, and his sisters live right here among us." They were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. Then Jesus told them, "A prophet is honored everywhere except his own hometown and among his relatives and his own family." And because of their unbelief, he couldn't do any miracles among them except to place his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. From there we go to Luke chapter 4, starting at verse 16. When he came to the village of Nazareth, his boyhood home, he went as usual to the synagogue on the Sabbath and stood up to read the scriptures. The scroll of Isaiah the prophet was handed to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where this was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim that captives will be released, and the blind will see, and the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come." He rolled up the scroll, handed it back to the attendant, and sat down. All eyes in the synagogue looked at him intently. Then he began to speak to them. "The scripture you've just heard has been fulfilled this very day." Everyone spoke well of him and was amazed by his gracious words that came from his lips. "How can this be?" they asked. Isn't this Joseph's son?" Then he said, "You will undoubtedly quote me this proverb, 'Physician, heal yourself,' meaning do miracles in your hometown like those you did in Capernaum. But I tell you the truth, no prophet is accepted in his own hometown." Certainly there were many needy widows in Israel in Elijah's time, when the heavens were closed for 3.5 years and severe famine devastated the land. Yet Elijah was not sent to any of them. He was sent instead to a foreigner, a widow of Zarephath in the land of Sidon. And there were many lepers in Israel in the time of the prophet Elisha. But the only one healed was Naaman the Syrian. When they heard this, the people in the synagogue were furious. Jumping up, they mobbed him and forced him to the edge of the hill on which the town was built. They intended to push him over the cliff, but he passed right through the crowd and went on his way. And now the commentary from Matthew. The residents of Jesus' hometown had known him since he was a young child and were acquainted with his family. They could not bring themselves to believe in his message. They were too close to the situation. Jesus had come to them as a prophet, one who challenged them to respond to unpopular spiritual truth. They did not listen to the timeless message because they could not see beyond the man. Jesus was not the first prophet to be rejected in his own country. Jeremiah experienced rejection in his hometown. even by members of his own family. And that's in Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 5 and 6. Jesus did few miracles in his hometown because of their unbelief. Unbelief blinds people to the truth and robs them of hope. These people miss the Messiah. Jesus said that the prophet, in other words, a worker for God, is never honored in his hometown. But that doesn't make his work any less important. A person doesn't need to be respected or honored to be useful to God. If friends, neighbors, or family don't respect your Christian work, don't let their rejection keep you from serving God. Sorry, that last one there was commentary from Mark.
Oh.
So we're going to continue on with Mark here. Jesus could have done greater miracles in Nazareth, but he chose not to because of the people's pride and unbelief. The miracles he did had little effect on the people because they didn't accept his message or believe that he was from God. Therefore, Jesus looked elsewhere, seeking those who respond to his miracles and message. And now the commentary for Luke. Jesus was quoting from Isaiah 61, verse 1 and 2. Isaiah pictures the deliverance of Israel from exile in Babylon as a year of jubilee when all debts are canceled, all slaves are freed, and all properties returned to the original owners. And that's in Leviticus chapter 25. But the release from Babylonian exile had not brought the expected fulfillment. They were still a conquered and oppressed people. So Isaiah must have been referring to a future messianic age. Jesus boldly announced, "The scripture you have just heard has been fulfilled this very day." Jesus was proclaiming himself as the one who would bring the good news to pass, but he would do so in a way that the people were not able to grasp. Even Jesus himself was not accepted as a prophet in his hometown. Many people have a similar attitude. Don't be surprised if your Christian life and faith are not easily understood or accepted by those who know you well. Because they know your background, your failures, and your foibles, they may not see past those to know the new person you have become. Let God work in your life. Pray to be a positive witness for him and be patient. Jesus' remarks angered the people of Nazareth because he was saying that God sometimes chose to reach Gentiles rather than Jews. Jesus implied that his hearers were as unbelieving as the citizens of the northern kingdom of Israel in the days of Elijah and Elisha, a time notorious for its great wickedness. So, yeah, I can definitely see that, and I'm sure that people that, I'm sure that people that have changed, from either their addictions, or I've heard stories of people that were in gangs and have turned, and they try to go back out, and they're all like, well, how's that you? We know what you did. We know who you killed or beat up, or,
Right.
We used to see you walking the streets or being drunk or going out and partying and all this and that, and now you want to come here and say something?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
And the people of Jesus's time, they were having a hard time believing him, but he had no flaws. He did no wrong. So
Yeah.
it wasn't that they saw his old life
Yeah,
and
never-
now he's changed.
Yeah.
He was always perfect.
Yeah.
But at that time they held family and the genealogy very important. And what your parents did, they kind of put onto you.
Yeah.
And they looked at him as a lowly carpenter, which is a stonemason at that time. But there's he's not a wealthy king. He's not a ruler of any kind. So he's just a know-nothing carpenter.
Yeah.
So it was hard for them to accept that. And we apologize for the shaking table. We've got puppy problems down here.
Okay, nothing. Just said we got to wrap this up.
Okay.
So yeah, just trying to keep it within our time limit here.
Yeah. Sorry.
So hope everybody has a glorious day, and we'll talk to you later.